I would like to introduce myself and share a project that I would like to try. I don't know whether it will go very far or whether there'd be any interest whatsoever. My name is Dr. Gary Staats. I am a retired seminary professor where I taught Hebrew and biblical studies, especially Old Testament Hebrew scriptures in seminary. At this time in life, I'm putting out different grammars as well as other thoughts on the Bible. A little bit about my background. I did my THM from Dallas Seminary, majoring in Greek. My Doctor of Theology was in Bible exposition from Dallas, a THD. And then I went on to work in the Hebrew scriptures. Studied at the Dropsy College in the 80s for my Master of Arts degree in Hebrew, and then went on and finished my PhD at New York University in the area of Hebrew and ancient Near Eastern languages. I've always had a passion for the original languages of Scripture, especially Greek and Hebrew. As a conservative Christian minister, it is my deep conviction that ministers need to keep at their Greek and Hebrew. The reality is, I don't think too many do, sad to say. And even seminaries are now decreasing their focus in Greek and Hebrew, which to me is very sad. So I'm wanting to put out, especially on YouTube, we have a number of PDFs out on Google Books, but I want to put out on YouTube some of the different Hebrew and Greek grammars that I have worked on, and hopefully it will help. I've called it Inductive Christological Hebrew Grammars, looking at Messianic texts from a grammatical point of view and an exegetical expository viewpoint as well. And then the same with Greek, entitled Inductive Christological Greek Grammar of the Greek New Testament. Also, as we think about the Bible, ancient Near Eastern languages are very important, as well, really, as rabbinic sources to understand the New Testament. And in terms of understanding the Hebrew scriptures, though, ancient Near Eastern texts, I think, are very important, especially Akkadian, if one is going to read the book of Genesis, for example, and especially being acquainted with the Numa Elish and Gilgamesh Epic and so forth. I believe these are very important to understand the contrast, I believe, between these mythological accounts of creation and flood and the biblical account, which I take to be the true historical account. But then I think one of the things that people often say, well, why would I want to learn all these languages? What's the point? Well, I think learning Akkadian will help provide a backdrop study for the Hebrew scriptures. And so I would first of all say, learn Hebrew and Greek, and then add a little bit of Akkadian or Ugaritic too. Ugaritic especially for the Psalms. What I would like to do in this video is introduce anyone that might have an interest to a short, what we might call inductive Akkadian grammar based upon the Epilogue of Hammurapi's Code. I was first introduced to Akkadian as a student at the Dropsy College back in the 80s, working on my master's. And then I continued studying Akkadian at New York University, working on my PhD. So I still have an enjoyment of these ancient Near Eastern texts, and I believe they're important for understanding the scriptures. So I would like to try something, and that is look at what we might call a short inductive Akkadian grammar based upon the Epilogue of Hammurapi's Code. But my desire as a minister, too, is to discuss it not only grammatically, but also with reference to biblical parallels from the Hebrew scripture and from Hebrew, and also with even New Testament application to Christ, which seems like a far stretch, but that's what I would like to do in this short Akkadian grammar. Now, when we talk about how to do this, I would advise going to Google Books and looking up my grammar. It's called a short Akkadian grammar based on the Epilogue of Hammurapi's Code. And then I would also encourage in that same work a translation of the Epilogue of Hammurapi's Code, which I give in an interlinear, literal, word-by-word translation from the Epilogue of Hammurapi's Code. So I would recommend that if one could see that or even pull it up and follow along, as we are going to be working through Akkadian grammar from an inductive point of view and making a short, can I say, comments. One of the things that also I would like to say is that when we think about this, I want to say, first of all, a work that has been invaluable to me is a work by Raquel Burger, B-O-R-G-E-R. And it's a German work, Babylonisch Assyrisch Leserstück. Basically, it has to do with the Babylonian, Assyrian study of these sources, especially Hammurapi's Code, Gilgamesh Epic. And what Burger has done, and he did this in 1966, was to give a transliteration of the cuneiform. Akkadian is actually in cuneiform, and it would be good to learn some of the basic cuneiform signs, and then go on from there to talk about how to transliterate those signs in a way that you could come to understand them. I think it's important to really get an understanding. I needed to get rid of that light. To really get an understanding of Akkadian, first of all, by learning some of the basic signs. And then I would move on to transliteration. That is, how are these signs transliterated into, we would say, English transliteration? How do we do that? And I think that is where Burger can be of tremendous help in that regard. And so I use Burger's transliteration. But in this work, I do my own normalization and my own translation. And in my translation, I use a very literal translation of the Akkadian, because I believe one of the best ways to learn it is in a literal way. Now, in talking about sources, I would recommend probably the primary source, or at least two of the primary sources, would be John Hunegaard, Huehnegard, the third edition, which basically is a wonderful Akkadian grammar, looking at every aspect, really, of Akkadian grammar. And a wonderful, wonderful work. I think one needs that in your library. I would also recommend a manual of Akkadian by David Marcus. David Marcus takes Hammurabi's Code, and especially the law code, and he begins working through some of the laws by way of looking at the cuneiform and teaching grammar inductively. And that is my desire, always in my Hebrew grammar teaching, my Greek grammar teaching, actually to teach it in an inductive way, because I feel, at least for me personally, I always enjoy inductive grammar much more for me personally than learning a total deductive approach to finally get to inductive reading. And I just would say, even from the get-go, learning something inductively has always been much more exciting to me. So what I did in this grammar, I basically took Hammurapi's code, and specifically the epilogue, and sought to put it down in an inductive way, grammatically, and then making comments as we go through it. So if you can find that source, it'd be good to follow online if you're following this video by going to the source on Google Books under my name, Dr. Gary Staats. And I'd like to start with the epilogue. Maybe I should say one thing about Hammurabi. Hammurabi was king of ancient Babylon from 1792 to 1750 BC. And there is what people have found, or scholars have found, a 7-foot high stone monument called a stele, in which there is a picture carved in this monument of Hammurabi receiving the law from Shamash. And so it's interesting. Many scholars will read this and do a comparative study with the book of Exodus, which is a fascinating study as well. But I wanted to start with the epilogue. To me, it's a fairly easy read, and try to look at grammar. And then hopefully a student can build on this by going to these larger grammar works by Borger, and also by Marcus, and also the one that we just named by Professor John Hunegard. I would recommend that very highly. As far as a dictionary, I would recommend a dictionary called A Concise Dictionary of Akkadian, edited by Jeremy Black, Andrew George, and Nicholas Postgate. It's wonderful. It's simple. It takes things and puts them together, translated in English, and easy to use. I would recommend that dictionary. The older wonderful dictionary, the classic, is Akkadische Handwörterbuch by W. van Soden. And it's in German, and it's in multi-volume set. It was one of the ones that we used in my own graduate work. So that would be something, if one was able to afford it, to get. But I would recommend, as a starting point, A Concise Dictionary of Akkadian by Black, George, and Postgate. That is what I enjoy using along with van Soden. So as we come to do the grammar, let me have you follow me on the epilogue. And this is from column 47, line 1. And again, I'm using the transliteration of Borger, but my own normalization and my own translation. So we begin by de not, and I'm putting it in normalization as I'm going over this or teaching or working through this. De not misharum or misharim Shah Hammurapi, the laws of justice, which Hammurapi, Sharum Leum, the king competent, or the competent king, Ukinuma set up. And then the next part, 6 through 8, line 6 through 8, Matam usam kinam uridam damkam ushats bitu. So we would translate that literally, the laws of justice which Hammurabi, the king competent, or the competent king, I'm giving it a very literal wooden translation, ukinuma, established or set up. And then matam usam kinam, and the land, direction reliable. We could say the land, reliable direction, uridam gamkam, and good conduct, or conduct good, good conduct, ushatsbitu, he caused to seize, or he secured. So as we go back and begin to look at the grammar, I would then turn to a short inductive Akkadian grammar based on the Epilogue of Hammurabi, where we begin to look at biblical parallel and begin to work through the grammar word by word. So we begin. Dinat is a noun, feminine plural, from dinu. Note that the ot ending indicates a feminine plural ending. It is, if we're using Hebrew to show illustration relative to the similarity, it is like the feminine plural ot in Hebrew. And the noun means law. And it is really related to the Hebrew din, which is judgment or law. So the laws of justice. Then we come to the second word, misharim. Notice misharim is the genitive singular noun ending in im. In Akkadian, the case endings are for the nominative singular, im for the genitive singular, and am for the accusative singular. U, a long U with a macron accent, is the nominative plural ending, and E, a long I with a macron accent, is the genitive and accusative plural ending. So the noun misharim basically means justice. And it's really related, I believe, to the cognate Hebrew word meshar, which is the word for justice or equity. So we begin with Hammurabi's law code, the laws of justice. And then in line 3, Shah Hammurapi, notice which Hammurabi. Shah is the relative pronoun in Akkadian, which. The Hebrew relative pronoun in Mishnaic Hebrew is sheh, whereas in biblical Hebrew it is asher. So Hammurapi is a proper name referring to the king of the law code. Notice then on line 4, sharum leum, which would be the king capable, or the capable king. Sharum is the masculine singular nominative noun meaning king, followed by the adjective leum, a nominative singular adjective meaning capable or competent. And notice that again is showing the nominative case in Akkadian. Then in number 5, line 5, ukinuma, notice is the verb, is what in Akkadian is called a depreterite subjunctive, third masculine singular from kanu, with the circumflex accent over the kanu, it's a weak verb, over the middle vowel, kanu, or the what appears as the middle vowel. So in other words, ukinuma is a depreterite then, and it means to set up. In Akkadian, the D conjunction, interestingly, corresponds to the Hebrew piel, which shows intensification. So the u suffix indicates a subjunctive, and the relative sha in Akkadian is used with subjunctive in subordinate clauses. It does not express a probability or wish, for example, like what we find in Greek or Latin. So it is basically a subjunctive in Akkadian, a D subjunctive. And let me just take a moment at this point in teaching inductively to talk a little bit about the Akkadian basic conjugations and basic stems. The verb that's often used in Akkadian is parasu, which means to cut. Sort of like in Greek, the verb luo, or like in Hebrew, like wine grain, the verb shamar, or the verb katav is used, I believe, in Lamdan. So basically, if we look at these different stems, we first of all, number one, have the G preterite stem, which is your basic stem corresponding to the cow stem in Hebrew. And that would be iprus, I-P-R-U-S, from parasu again. Number two, we have what is called the D preterite stem, which is like the Hebrew PL stem, showing intensification, or something that is done repeatedly. And it is spelled uparis, U-P-A-R-R-I-S. And that shows some intensity or something that is repeatedly done. The third stem is what we would call the sheen stem, the sheen preterite stem. It's like the hifil, where we have the hey prefix in hifil, and it's showing causation. It is the causative stem, and will ordinarily contain sha after the prefix and before the root. An example would be u sha pris. Notice u is your prefix, sha is your infix, and pris brings your root again. So u sha pris would be he caused to cut. Then, number four, we have what is called the in preterite stem. And it's like in Hebrew, the nifal stem. It indicates a passive meaning. And we could spell it ipparis, I-P-P-A-R-I-S, from a historical development of Akkadian in paris. So I-N-P-A-R-S, the N then moves and assimilates with the P, becoming ipparis. So in paris becoming ipparis. Number five, we have what is called the T infix, or GT preterite stem, which indicates a reflexive or reciprocal meaning, like iptaras. And we also have the tan, T-A-N, infix, which indicates an iterative meaning. So we have a reflexive meaning, like he himself has cut, or looking at he repeatedly was cutting, like iptanaras. Then number six, we have the two tenses here, if I'm going to comment on them, are preterite or past, as in iprus, and the present or future is in ipparas. And notice again, the verb parasu in the infinitive means to cut, so it becomes the model verb that's used in this conjugation. And the future will have, let's say in the G stem, will have ipparas, I-P-A-R-R-A-S. Now, when we summarize what we've been saying, the G stem is iprus. It's the G preterite, he cut. And notice we have what is called thematic vowel patterns. And here, the thematic vowel is a U. Notice iprus, the U is the thematic vowel in the final syllable. Ipparas, he will cut. Here you have an A vowel pattern in the G present or future. It's where we get the A in the present or future, followed by the A. And thematic vowels, as you look at what vowels are used to try to determine whether you're looking at a past or a futuristic form. So as we move on then, by the way, Akkadian was written in consonants. like you had ah, we, lu. So you would have a consonant vowel. They're together. And so again, your vowels came later in language study, or in language development, I should say. But it's interesting. In these consonants, you had what would be a consonant and reading like a vowel. So that's why when we put this together, we can still use vowel patterns in understanding the tense that we're looking at. And notice the D stem is uparis, U-P-A-R-I-S. It's the D preterite. He cut repeatedly. So here we have an A-I thematic vowel pattern for the D preterite tense. And then he will cut is uparas. Notice here we have an AA vowel pattern, and that would be something like he will cut repeatedly, because the D stem can have an iterative meaning or an ongoing meaning. And that is the D future or the D present, uparas. Note the doubling of the middle radical. Same thing that we have in Hebrew. For example, in Hebrew, in the PL stem, we have diber, is an example that I use to speak. And here again, we double the middle radical, same way in Akkadian. So there's a real parallel grammatically in the Semitic language of Akkadian and Hebrew. There is also, like I was saying, an AA vowel pattern in the present or future of the D stem, as we've seen above, uparas. Then you have your sheen stem, ushapris. Notice this is the sheen preterite. He caused to cut. And here we have an AI thematic vowel pattern. And ushapras, here we have the sheen, which is your present with your, again, your final A, like your A in your sha and your final A in pras. So we would see that he will cause to continually or cut. Then we have the in stem, which is ipparis, I-P-P-A-R-I-S, is the in preterite. He or it was cut. Notice the A-I vowel pattern there. And then the future is ipparas, the A-A vowel pattern. He or it will be cut. And notice again, the original was in paris with your in consonant, and then it basically assimilated into the P, becoming ipparis, I-P-P-A-R-I-S. So NP assimilates and becomes a PP in Akkadian. Note that the I prefix is used in the third masculine singular of the G and N stems, and the U prefix in the third masculine in the D and sheen stems, in the preterite and future tenses. The N stem is like the nifal, again, yishaber, he will be broken, from yin shaber, a comment that we had already made, where we have the in and the sheen assimilating, becoming yishaber. So again, what we have here is the same kind of a thing, the nifal assimilating into the sheen of the stem. Hence, we end up with in sheen and sheen in Hebrew. Like yin shaber becoming yish shaber. And ma, again, going back to the text again of Hammurapi, is simply the conjunction and it's attached to the verb. So the phrase is rendered, which he set up, and I'd like to just conclude this first section with going back and doing a few more lines. Note the Akkadian kanu corresponds to the Hebrew kun. And so as we've been reading this text, going back now to Hammurabi, to line 5, ukinuma is a deep preterite subjunctive, as we said, but notice kanu is the root, and it corresponds, interestingly, to the Hebrew kun, a middle weak verb, meaning to set up, middle weak in Akkadian, middle weak in Hebrew. And then line 6, matam usam kina, the land, reliable direction. Notice matam is the accusative singular noun with the am ending from matum, meaning land, which would be the nominative. Usam is also the accusative singular noun rendered direction, again, the showing accusative, and kinam is the accusative singular adjective meaning firm or reliable. So Hammurabi claims to give reliable direction to the land and the laws that he has developed. And then line 7, u ridam damkam, and literally, and good administration. U, or u, is the conjunction, meaning and. It's sort of like the ve in Hebrew, or u. And the noun ridam is the accusative singular, meaning administration. And the adjective accusative singular damkam is from damkum, meaning good. You always go back to the nominative in the dictionary. Notice again, both ending in am, showing an accusative singular. And then finally, ending this particular time on YouTube, we have line 8, Yushat's bitu, is the sheen preterite, subjunctive, third masculine singular from sabatu. That is, he caused to seize, with the macron accent over the A. And notice the sha infix here indicates the sheen causative stem, and the A-I vowel pattern with the U prefix and the U suffix indicates the subjunctive due to the preceding sha in line 3. So we'll stop there for now, but one of the things that I hope you're seeing is that Akkadian basically has a lot of parallels grammatically with Hebrew. And as we begin this section, the king is claiming that he established firm justice that he received from Shamash, the sun god, and he's making this final, can I say, claim in the epilogue. And so I'm hoping that this can be a help. It's sort of enjoyable for me to work through some of this grammar that I have learned in the past and enjoy doing. So blessings to you as you study Akkadian, and if you study it. And by the way, Akkadian got its name from the ancient city of Akkad. Again, that's where we get the name Akkadian. So thank you for this time, and we'll hope to continue on a bit if there is some interest in this. Thank you.